Hello cookies, it's Siri. I am back and I'm currently in Berlin. As you can tell from the title of the video, today we're going to talk about Berlin and Stockholm. I miss Sweden so much that I'm actually currently watching The Bachelor Sweden. Yes, I am as disappointed in myself as you probably are disappointed in me right now. My only excuse is that I miss Sweden so much that I needed to watch something, but all the other channels don't allow you to watch any of their things outside of Sweden, and the next best thing is The Bachelor. And I have never watched any season of any Bachelor of any other country before, so this is really an exception, but it just goes to show you how much I miss Sweden. I did not expect to fall in love with Berlin because it's huge, it's crowded, it's chaotic. I've been many times almost hit by people on their bikes who don't look actually when they cross in between the bike lane and the road, and then you have the pedestrian side and they just don't care. I've never seen actually in my life before so many people that have currently taken things and that are just wandering the street and no one cares because it's so normal. There's so much happening and it's really against what I usually feel comfortable with, because I'm very comfortable with the order that you can find in Singapore, with the calm in Stockholm. That's more the kind of cities that I like. Surprisingly enough, I have no idea why, but I really love Berlin. I fell in love with the city. Most of the people I have encountered so far in Berlin after 1.5 months have been extremely sweet, including people at the supermarkets. I mean, there's been maybe 2 of them that have been extremely unfriendly, but there's even been this guy at a store called Edeka that stopped the whole queue to teach me how to say the receipt in German, and he was like writing it down on the paper and teaching me German, just taking his time. I've had so many encounters like that at the gyms, because I've been to 2 different gyms. People have been really sweet, and I used to say that the sweetest people that I have ever met were in South Africa, and that's why I really want to go back, because I really love the people there. But now I can tell you that people in Berlin have been very sweet. So now, after all of this, let's just start comparing Stockholm and Berlin. I buy a lot of things online because 1, I find the best deals, and 2, I'm an introvert. I just really don't like crowded places and shopping malls, and I just don't like doing it. So online shopping is the way I do things. I just buy everything that I can online. In Stockholm, you can pick up your things either at the post office, and the post office that was nearest to where I lived, not live anymore, lived. The people there were super nice. They liked Laika, they recognized me. I would talk to them all the time. I knew them by name. So we had a good relationship, and they're so friendly. And you could also choose to get your parcel sent to an Insta box where you can just pick it up with a code. And nowadays there's also a post box as well that is owned by the post company, but it's the same thing as Insta box, and it's right opposite where I used to live. And so you don't have to talk to any human. The delivery is really quick, usually 1 day or 2 days, at most 3 days, and you can just deal with everything yourself. You get a code, you have your phone, and you can just go. You don't have to deal with people, which I usually prefer. Here, the nearest post office center, the people working there are so not friendly, including one lady that literally threw back a parcel at my face, as in she threw it back across the table, because she said that it was not paid, it was actually already prepaid. And it's a long story, but that made me really upset because it was glasses and I was scared she would have broken the glasses by throwing them back. In those kinds of situations, I'm just like, oh, I don't want to deal with people. But unfortunately, so far, I have ordered tons of things here in Berlin online, and none of the things actually you can send to something like Instabox or a post box or something where you don't have to talk to people. The thing they do here is that if you're not home, they can sometimes leave it with your neighbors. And I've had twice already to knock at my neighbors' doors, and they were extremely friendly, but it's still a huge deal for me. And when I went to the downstairs neighbor, he had something like 6-7 parcels by the door, and he said, okay, which name? And he had to find my name like he was the post office, because the DHL guy just left all the parcels there with him to deal with. Of course, it's nice if you have a nice neighbor, but actually the first week I moved here, I saw a note that a neighbor left on the door doors outside, it said, one of you neighbors has taken one of my parcel. I don't know who it is and you're not giving it back. So basically someone accused someone of stealing their parcels. And of course DHL in that case would always say, oh, but we left it with your neighbor. That kind of stuff is just for me so counterproductive. And also I've caught the DHL driver many times actually driving outside, and both my flatmate and I are home, but he just doesn't want to bother. And then I received the email that says, you were not home, we could not deliver, while we were both at home and both awake and both waiting for the parcel. Usually it's like as food. In Sweden we have so many options. If you go on apotea.se, which is a pharmacy website where I buy 90% of my things that I need, you have something like 7-8 options of delivery, and many of them don't even involve human contact. I mean, sometimes you can have deliveries where they just leave the stuff outside your door, so you never even have to speak to anyone, and that's the best thing. So here, the fact that you have to either deal with your neighbor or go to the post office every time, especially if you order 20 kilos of food for your dog and you have to walk 500 meters with a huge box, is not super nice. So for me, that's really not convenient, and that's something that I'm sometimes upset about because it's a huge stress factor. The one thing though that I have noticed, so that you're not thinking that Sweden is going to win this round so easily, is that most of the things I have ordered here in Berlin arrived the next day, even if it's stuff from abroad. In Stockholm, yes, if you order from a Swedish store, it can come the day after or 2 days after. But if you order stuff from abroad, from France or Italy or somewhere else, it can take a week, sometimes even 10 days. And I usually don't mind because I think that's still okay. But here, all the things that I have ordered from Denmark, from Germany, from France, from here and there, yes, I shop a lot online, everything online. I don't want to meet people in real life, thank you. All the things arrived sometimes the day after, including when I purchased them on a Sunday. And I'm thinking, wow. So I guess if you're really impatient, Berlin would win. But if you're like me, or you prefer not to talk to anyone, Stockholm would win. The next thing is the housing situation. Anyone who has tried to find a room or an apartment in both Berlin and Stockholm will know that it's difficult. It's extremely difficult to find a housing both in Stockholm and Berlin, and it's super overpriced, and there's a tough concurrence. That's both Swedish and French, but you probably understand there's tough competition. You sometimes have to accept places that you don't want and to live with really not so nice landlords. The first place I landed in here in Berlin was a disaster. I ended up with someone super misogynistic, super dirty, who expected me and his girlfriend to do everything, who was always telling me mean things because I don't want to go party and I don't want to go drink and things, and trying to force me and being very aggressive. And in Stockholm as well, we had to deal with landlords that just decided to make the rent much more because they can and they want to, and those kinds of situations you have to accept in cities like Stockholm and Berlin. For me, the hardest, I think, is that people that are in Stockholm and try to find housing understand people that are in Berlin and try to find housing understand, like my classmates or even random people at the gym. Anyone that I speak to here in Berlin, random people that walk their dogs, everyone says, yeah, Berlin is nice if you find a place that is cheap, like an old contract. It's a long story, but if you have an old contract here in Berlin, your rent has been the same for the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, which is super good because inflation has been like this. People don't understand. So people that are abroad, like people that I talk to, they say, oh, it can't be that difficult, or maybe you're just picky, or maybe it's just this and that. So people really think that you're just lazy and trying to complain. But my classmates at acting school now have had issues. Many of them were in really bad situations, and one talked to a lawyer, another one ended up living on someone's sofa. Most of them have like short-term contracts that will end the latest before the next semester. Some people are paying twice what I'm paying, but they share in the kitchen and they share in bathrooms sometimes. And all of us that live in Berlin, we understand how difficult it is, and it makes people really depressed and stressed and you can't focus on school. But outsiders, they think that, oh, it can't be that difficult. Unless you live it, you don't understand. So when you're in the situation, everyone feels it. You feel the tension, you feel the common ground of it's difficult to find a place. But outsiders, they think that it's easy if you have the time, or you just need a bit of luck. Like, they trivialize it, even though we all need a place to live, we all need a roof over our head. That's a constant worry for most of us. And the same situation happens in Stockholm as well. I mean, there's also the same issue if you go on Reddit, coming to Sweden or Stockholm. There are so many people that get scammed all the time, that complain. I have, of course, lived in Stockholm for 10 years and I've met many people through work and school and everything, and everyone also says that it's difficult. But then outsiders that don't live in Stockholm would say the same thing, that, oh, it can't be that difficult, you just need a bit of luck, you just need to look harder. And for me, it's painful, and then it starts to get frustrating, and it downright makes me pissed off. And you know, Cookies, that I rarely get pissed off. The lack of understanding when I'm telling people over and over again that it's so difficult to find housing in Stockholm and Berlin, and no one listens, and people think that, oh, it can't be that hard, and you live in it. Like, you're the one risking to be homeless, just like many of thousands of people that live in Berlin and Stockholm. The last thing that I'm going to include in today's video, because it's getting quite long already, is owning a dog, because you know that Laika arrived finally. I couldn't take her with me actually at the beginning. It was a huge drama, because Norwegian airline told me many times that she was allowed because she's my emotional support dog. She actually has papers, or I have papers from multiple doctors saying that she's my emotional support dog. When I called Norwegian in February or March, they said everything was fine, and I double, triple, quadruple confirmed every time. And then on the 15th of September, when we arrived at the airport, they changed their mind and they said, no, you can't have your dog. So I had to leave Laika with the ex-boyfriend, and I was crying all the way to Berlin, and I was without my dog. It was the worst situation. First of all, parks are better lit in Stockholm at night. Let's just say they're lit at night, because all the parks that I've been at so far here in Berlin are dark. They're dark at night. There's not a single light. So I basically just don't go. I stay on the outskirts near the road, because it doesn't feel really safe to be walking in dark parks at night in Berlin. And that's something that really shocks me. I don't understand why it's dark like that, because parks in Stockholm are lit. So the first time that happened, I thought, oh, it's probably just this particular park. So I went to another park and it was also really dark, and I thought, okay, maybe it's just this area. Then you change area and then you realize that the parks are freaking dark at night. So when it comes to being outside at night with your dog, taking the dog out for a late toilet trip, Stockholm definitely wins, because at least it's lit. But one great thing about Berlin that I've talked about with other Scandinavians is there's no wind. I mean, Stockholm is extremely windy because it's coastal. Berlin feels much warmer than Stockholm. So in Stockholm, when it says that it's 12 degrees or 13 degrees, I usually have tons of layers. And here in Berlin, I sometimes don't even have a scarf. Like today, I didn't use a scarf, and sometimes I just have one sweater. And I didn't understand why Berlin feels so warm until a classmate said, you know what's best here compared to Copenhagen and Stockholm, because he's from Copenhagen? There's no wind. There's no wind in Berlin. And that's when I thought, yes, that's why Berlin feels much warmer than Stockholm, because the wind in Scandinavia goes straight through your freaking clothes and to your bones, and you just freeze. Freezing makes me extremely miserable. Like, I really get depressed and down, and my entire body hurts, all my joints and my back, and I get headaches. A place could be perfect with everything I want. If I freeze, it just hurts. It freaking hurts, and I get eczema. The next thing with owning a dog that I like here in Berlin is that even though they have changed the law, and technically you're always supposed to have your dog on a leash unless you can control them, in many places and many areas where you have people walking, like where I live around here, cars are supposed to drive very, very slow. In places like that, many people have their dogs off leash, and you have police patrolling and things, and they don't care. So because it is a law that has only been changed very recently, I think most people don't actually know. And so people still have their dogs off leash. I don't have Laika off leash all the time. I have her off leash when I see that there are not so many people or dogs, and when it's super early in the morning or super late, so there are not so many people and so much activity on the streets. And it's really nice because it's super good training for her, because in Stockholm it's really not allowed to have your dog off leash. There are people that have their dogs off leash, but it's very, very rare to see, and usually the dogs are extremely well behaved, while here most dogs that I've seen have been off leash everywhere, and for me that's also a surprise. And oh, the best thing about Berlin is that most restaurants and cafes have allowed Laika inside. That has been such a fantastically great, amazing surprise, because every time that I go in a store and ask, oh, excuse me, are dogs allowed here, or restaurant, they say, yeah, natürlich. Which is, yeah, of course, why are you asking me stupid questions, peasant? Not quite like that, but the tone is really like, yeah. And it doesn't even matter if you go to slightly fancier places. I mean, I've only been to maybe like a half fancy place. I haven't been to any fancy place. Or if you just go to a regular cafe, or even if you just go to the local place around where you can find schnitzels. Everyone is super okay with having dogs. Of course, you have exceptions, but those places you can avoid. I avoid those places. I don't want to support any business that does not allow dogs inside anyway. And you have so many restaurants and places, and many of them are really delicious here in Berlin, that, okay, if this restaurant says we don't allow dogs, you have 20 others around it that allow dogs, so for me it's not an issue. While in Stockholm, in the area where we lived, many places started to allow dogs because many people around the area have dogs, but it's still not the norm. It's usually mostly assumed that dogs are not allowed unless you asked, and here it's mostly the opposite, where dogs are allowed unless they tell you. So that has been really, really freaking nice. The next thing I think for me is very important to Laika, and it's the availability of clean parks, and I mean really clean parks without anything weird, and then dog areas where dogs can be officially off leash. So in Stockholm you have a lot of different places that might take you at most 10-15 minutes by foot with your dog to reach, where dogs can be off leash and play with each other. Here the nearest one for us would be 50 minutes away by train, and so we haven't gone there yet with Laika, and that's something that she really misses, because I can tell and I can see, and I know my dog, she loves other dogs, and for me it breaks my heart and makes me extremely sad that she doesn't get that opportunity. I have seen a lot of things here in parks in Berlin. I mean, it's Berlin. I have seen needles, I have seen a lot of glass, I have seen a lot of things. In terms of cleanliness, when it comes to my dog's paws, I'm very worried about her paws and her walking on something weird. For me, Stockholm is a clear winner, because there are a lot of areas just for dogs. I have never seen a needle in Stockholm parks, and I've never seen so much broken glass as I have seen here in Berlin in parks where dogs actually go, and where you have kids and next to kindergartens. So now I'm not entirely sure which one is winning, but I would say that from my gut feeling it's 50-50. For me, both cities have my heart. I actually think I could be happy almost anywhere if I would not have to worry about the budget. And with all of that said, cookies, I will wish you a very good day or a very good evening, and I will see you very soon. Bye!